Hey everyone, welcome to the Ultimate Personal Trainer Podcast. I'm Paul, and today we've got a very, very exciting guest for you. We've got my former coach, Alex Kikel, on the podcast. Alex, the prep coach. How you doing, buddy?
Fantastic. Like we were talking about before we started recording, family's good, so I'm good. Your family's good, so it makes me even happier.
We can't complain at that point. So, Alex, we're going to get into some really, really cool stuff today. We're going to be talking about some stuff that PTs can actually take away and implement into their work with their clients. All right, can you give us a little bit of your background first before we get into it? Because we've got a ton of new students who don't know a ton about you yet, so it'd be really cool to be able to pass that on.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting, because what I do now is not what I thought I was ever going to do in the beginning. So it was originally going to school, got my master's in performance enhancement and injury prevention, was going to go ahead and get my PhD and work in a human performance research lab and do the teaching thing, because I always like teaching, if you couldn't guess enough already. And it was just, at that time, I was posting on the bodybuilding.com forums. For whatever reason, people thought I knew what I was talking about. I post up studies, I post up my own training, workouts, and all that fun stuff. People started basically saying, hey, train me. And I'd train them for free. And then they'd win a pro card as a natural, or whatever we were working with at the time, or they'd have a lot of success. And then all of a sudden, people say, I got to pay you for this, so here's money. And at that time, I was full-time college student, working 50 hours a week at my job, not getting paid overtime, by the way, because they won't do that, but just burn the candle at both ends. And I see all this basically free money coming in because I'm having fun with doing this. So then it was, okay, switching from that to now going out of the academic world and just focusing on my own thing. So if I didn't succeed in the first year of doing my own business, I was going to go back to my PhD and then do all the school stuff. That was history 10, 11, 12, whatever years ago now, because I basically started before I even competed. I was that a-hole who was giving advice before I even stepped on stage. It just happened to work out for me. And so I started working off with bodybuilders, saw a lot of success, then slowly got into powerlifting, so getting the strongman, and it slowly evolved over the years to now where I say I fix biology. It's a professional athlete, it's an amateur athlete of all different sports. I just started working with a whole team of grandmaster chess players, actually, to dysfunctional people, general population people, just trying to lose some fat, fix cardiac problems, renal problems, like kind of involved in everything. And it just really evolved from my passion to learn. Because once you fix this, it's okay, what's the next thing? And then you see different things pop up among different clienteles where, oh, we fixed their blood pressure problem like this, but that problem is completely different. And then it goes into building muscle, losing fat. It snowballed into where I'm at today, which is fixing biology. So there's my little synopsis.
It's kind of funny because when you look at that, it's because it's mirrored my journey in some ways as well. Mine's more been going down rather than working with physique athletes, it's down the rehabilitation path, but that then led into, physiological dysfunction, psychological stuff, and everything that manifests in between, where you become kind of like really a specialist generalist rather than someone who just goes, all right, cool, I'm just a physique coach, or I just work with this niche or avatar of people, where you're kind of just working with biology as a concept rather than an actual person.
And that's exactly it, because I really dipped my toes into the pharmaceutical world whenever I was a natural bodybuilder, competed a couple times and just had to go on TRT myself because I just destroyed my hormonal levels. And then I started realizing, oh my God, this is pretty cool stuff. Like we can fix every biological problem with a drug. And then you start going down the different holistic methods. You start working with naturopaths and learning from naturopaths. And you go, oh, we can fix everything with a supplement. So there's 2 drugs and supplements. Then you start going down the other path and you go, oh my God, understand subatomic particles and stepping outside on the ground, getting that electron donation flow through your body. We have different tools, different modalities. We have something to fix everything in 2023. And that's exactly it. And kudos to a coach if they just want to work with one specific clientele. That's awesome. It's all about what you want. I just happen to like and enjoy working with everyone. But it is cool. It's just fixing biology through, if it's a training, a lifestyle, a recovery, a drug, a supplement. We have so many modalities. The little like acupressure pads. Like I have my Shakti pad. So if anyone's not aware of that, yeah, there you go. Yeah, so the little spikes, all that, all the cool stuff they've been doing over in India for how many hundreds of years, those pain-based therapies and activating the parasympathetic nervous system, they've been doing that forever. Why aren't we as athletes or general population people or disease people utilizing that? So many little things like that could just make the difference. It's cool.
It is very, very cool stuff. I'm sure we're going to go right back into that. But the first thing we wanted to roll on, because for those that don't know, Alex actually prepped me for a bunch of photo shoots, which kind of went blew my business up, which is like a really, really exciting thing. I got into pretty awesome shape, and then also managed to get into semi-pro basketball, which is a pretty diverse goal set, which you handled extremely well, because having a good amount of lean muscle mass and playing basketball aren't necessarily the most they don't fit that well a lot of the time. So one of the things that I really took away from your coaching, and like I've been implementing with my clients and using it really, really well, is the myocyte maturation cycle that you base your mesocycles around with hypertrophy. Because when I first started working with you, I was like, what the hell are you on about? I had never really heard of anyone working with that. There was like the classic construct of mechanical tension, metabolic damage, muscle damage. And then you started talking about this myocyte maturation cycle. I followed the program because coach said so. And the results were mind-blowing in every way, shape, or form, and how you alternated that. So would be cool if you talked a little bit about that, how you kind of came up with how that works, and then also the process that people can actually go through with that.
Yeah, for sure. So specific in this conversation for physique-based athletes, really anyone trying to chase anabolism. You could be a strongman, a power lifter, a gen pop dysfunctional. You're trying to build muscle tissue. We're looking at how a myocyte or how a muscle cell actually matures. So it's interesting. You hear the big catchy words, and they have to be catchy, because if not, we wouldn't know how to define them. So the mechanical tension, the metabolic stress, the trauma, all that cool stuff. We're really looking at alactin and glycolytic fibers. Now, you kind of peel back the layer on that, and you go, okay, well, we can drive that through traditional damage myotrauma. We can drive that through hypoxic-based changes, because what's the most basic stressor that we can give our body? Hypoxia, right? How long can you live without food? What about water? What about oxygen? So look down the other pH, cellular fluxing changes. Look at everything you can accomplish with just high loading or high repetition, and all the fun things in between. And then you realize, okay, we have the big players that act in the mice, and everyone knows about those, right? What about all the other low strain players, the other proteins in there, the troponin, the tropomyosin, the M actins, or the M proteins rather, the beta actins, gamma actins? Go down the list of all the different myogens and all these different enzymes that are part of this muscle matrix that makes your biceps look bigger, and you realize it's not that simple. The main rate limiting factors in muscular hypertrophy is really the hierarchy principle of glycogen storage, because if we look, we would deflate our actual muscle cells of all the glycogen, all the ions, all the fluids, all the nitrogen. So nitrogen meaning the other components that aren't just active myosin. You'd have nothing. That's what, 90%, 95%, 85%. It's a big number, right? Changes from person to person, but it's so massively dependent upon being able to store nutrients properly. And that gets divvied up into proper, actually, energetic signaling, photonic exchange, so the cool stuff with the sun going into your body, traversing your receptors to be able to actually drive that unbinding of drug to receptor, the myotraumatic changes, and the mitochondrial changes. So even though the top heading is glycogen storage, the four subheaders are those four things that actually drive muscular adaptation. So that is kind of the prerequisite understanding to say, okay, now broad picture, okay, because we're not focusing on the minutiae right now. Broad picture, how does a myocyte mature, right? So we have all these undifferentiated cells just kind of floating around. They get acted upon by IGF and by some kind of trauma. Again, that trauma, and this is why it's very important for people to understand that it's not just high reps, it's not low reps, it's not just short rest periods, long rest periods, it's not just glycogalactic. It can be acted upon by any stressor. You will respond differently to that stressor, so you may respond better to high reps or low reps, high intensity, low intensity, whatever you fill in the blank, but it is IGF, and it's a spark of some kind of a stress and trauma. So we have that. Those two factors start influencing and acting upon those undifferentiated satellite cells. So floating around, actually starting to give them a job, and they start to actually change and mature into actual nucleus. So those nucleuses then start floating around, turn into actual nuclei. So we're having these multinucleated cells now that start to impose a demand and get assigned a job. So as we go through our training progression of training harder, longer, more intensity, whatever, just progressing more, we are starting to now assign those a job. And now all of those nuclei can now go ahead and be turned into a new fiber. And that happens time and time again. It's happening every second, every minute, every week, every month. It's you can't really track it, but we're trying to do our best job to track it.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, even more kind of under the heading, we have to understand what those are reliant upon. So to drive that entire myocyte maturation cycle, those are dependent upon first ribosomal changes, then enzymatic changes, then mitochondrial changes, then glycogen storage changes, then ultimately what? We get a new fiber. But those changes have to occur. So if we understand that, the basic way we can kind of plan a mesocycle, and the total duration can be very dependent upon the person. It really is a constantly cyclical process. So we can't really say, I always say like 12 to 20 weeks. We're looking at generally like the long ester half-life of certain drugs, understanding peak concentrations, and just looking at how training usually works, where we never start off at like our max volume or max intensity. It's usually slowly building up. Same thing with food, same thing with drugs. Everything kind of meshes and potentiates each other. So regardless of your time frame, they could be microcycles, they could be full mesocycles, whatever, that doesn't matter. But we're essentially looking at having some kind of an alarm phase. So the first week or two, you're just getting to the gym, right? You're just getting back to, let's say you took 2 weeks off, a week off, whatever. You're just having basic organelle movement to where you're like, oh yeah, that's how I contract my bicep, or oh, that's how I remember how to squat now. And all of a sudden everything feels great, right? That first week you get these amazing pumps, but usually loading's pretty down, or at least somewhat blunted. After we have that kind of alarm phase, we're really trying to actually build up glycolytic capacity. So again, going back to what we talked about, being able to drive up those ribosomal and enzymatic and mitochondrial changes, that's all happening during that phase. So after that glycolytic phase, we're transitioning to more of an alactic loading phase. So whereas during the glycolytic phase, we may slowly work up working sets, during the alactic phase, we're going to really work up loading. So let's say we worked up to whatever number of working sets that you know you respond well to, max them out. Now it's stick with those working sets and just load. Add 2.5 pounds to the bar every time. Just get stronger and stronger and stronger to what? Assign that new fiber a job. That alactic phase is really about assigning the job to either store glycogen, flux mitochondria, deal with hemodynamics, the list goes on and on. Then finally you have that actual maturation phase. Could be week 12, could be week 20, could be week 15. It's kind of dependent upon the person and really which fiber, because that could be happening in your biceps, but in your quads, you're actually having a new cycle actually start. So it's not as global as it seems, but we kind of have to make it that way for the sake of the conversation. So we have that myocyte maturation phase. That final maturation phase is when I like to kind of go all in with people. So we've worked up volume. We've brought up ribosomes, enzymes, and mitochondria, and stored glycogen, nitrogen, ions, and fluids properly. Your body's ready to just take a beating. So now we're trying to go ahead, and you can kind of do whatever you want those final weeks. I like giving people the ability to change up what kind of intensity techniques they like. Could be drop sets, triple drop sets, NOS sets, rest pause sets, whatever you want to just take your body and find your limit, because everything that we're talking about is just a stress adaptation response. That's all it is. You want to get better in the gym, you want to build more muscle tissue, you want to lose more body fat, you want to get smarter neurologically. Everything in our life is a stress adaptation response. We're stress-based creatures, so we have to give it a stress, let it recover, then go back that. And over time, and this is where I love progressive overload, because you can apply it to everything in your life. Progressive overload doesn't mean go to the gym and always hit a PR. Progressive overload means start here and slowly find a way to get better over time. Not do more, not get stronger, get better over time. The example I tell everyone, because I just love my kids so much, is that we started walking around our neighborhood, okay, just from to the stop sign and back, 5 minutes, right? Nothing crazy. Then me and my wife started walking all around the neighborhood and up this big hill. Then we started going up that big hill with pushing one kid in a stroller. Then going up that big hill, pushing 2 kids in a stroller. Now I'm up the hill sprinting that big hill with 3 kids in our Wonderful. So it's 200 pounds going up. It takes about 2.5 minutes to do. That's progressive overload. It's the whole Hercules carrying the cow on his back and it slowly got bigger as he got older. It's slowly progressing over time in some way and getting better. Doesn't mean more, we're looking at better. So if we can kind of adopt that mentality and understand, because I feel like progressive overload got a little bastardized in the fitness community for a little bit there. So it's kind of coming out of that, but it's just better. It doesn't have to be more. Better is better. More is not always better. Yeah, so that's a quick synopsis on that maturation cycle. I'll stop talking so much.
No, that's really, really good. And it's really interesting, because a lot of people don't ever look at it that way. It's like, all right, cool, mechanical tension's it, let's do that. And let's maximize that, when really mechanical tension is a form of stress to create an adaptation in a tissue. It's just one form, and it kind of neglects any kind of other forms of stress. And yeah, everything is a stress response. When you learn a new language, it's the stress of learning. It's the stress of actually challenging those neurons in the brain and putting it together. That's why you see such good positive adaptations to things like neurodegenerative diseases, people who are bilingual or multilingual, pardon me. One thing that I did want to touch on as well is your application of oxidative stress protocols within those cycles. So, because in one of our programs, probably the one that I responded to the most, because we repeated it. I noticed that because it was still working. So why change, why change what works? We alternate between like a mild trauma to an oxidative stress pattern. What was the thought process and rationale behind that? Because a lot of people really struggle with going, why am I changing my program so drastically week to week?
Yep. So going back to what we said about being able to grow through multiple different stressors, look at in the basic chemical principles of Le Chatelier's principle, really big principle everyone can learn from in this world. We were looking at fixing your rate limiting factor. Yeah. And once you fix that rate limiting factor, it's going to potentiate your strengths by tenfold. It's actually a specific percentage, but I don't remember the specific percentage off the top of my head. But if we can bring up our weaknesses, it could potentiate our strengths. So if you're very good at loading heavy and poor at doing high reps, you should probably work in some kind of high repetition work in there. If you are the person who is breathing out your mouth, no nasal breathing at all when you're working out, rest periods are 3 to 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever people are doing. If you're bad at something, do something to get better at what you're bad at. It's just looking at Le Chatelier's principle. So to me, almost everyone, at least most people, we're looking to drive up anabolism as a whole. I usually like to rotate between, like you said, some kind of a myotraumatic week and more of a hypoxia oxygen fluxing based week and go back and forth. And then as you go on, it may be 4 weeks in, we may drop one of them because someone's like, you know what? I just absolutely hate these hypoxic based weeks. I feel better. I feel fuller. I am stronger. I respond better in every single way in my life and my daily life to the myotraumatic weeks. We might just have those because some people have that amount of hypoxic nature to where genetically they don't need additional training, even though it may be technically weak on the external. Internally, it's not the same. You see that all the time with like the top IFBB pros. Why can those guys train? Some of them train very poorly and yet they grow because they can do a curl using all their shoulder momentum and they're getting more stimulation in that one curl in their bicep from that one rep than you are in an entire bicep workout. And that's awesome, right? Like how cool is biology? And that's not everyone. The vast majority of pros out there, that's a bad example, I guess. A lot of the pros are doing a lot of things right these days. It's super, super cool, but their body is not ours. So if you're looking at your top favorite IFBB pro, you can't train like them. You have to train like you. Sounds super lame, but we all respond so differently. So generally, we're doing this kind of rotation 1, rotation 2, back to that throughout the entire mesocycle, trying to figure out, okay, is this working? Is it helping me at all? If you find out it's not, drop what's not working, keep in what is working. It's the same with drug usage. We're trying to go ahead and make sure that we are taking what works and getting rid of what doesn't work. Same thing with nutrition, recovery modalities, everything. So in the training-based world, I like to usually say, okay, what are you terrible at? It's usually fluxing oxygen. Most people can't handle oxygen to save their lives. And then they wonder why there is some kind of an organ-based issue or, autonomic-based problem with high blood pressure, high resting heart rate, things like that. It's because they're slipping electrons, gasping for air, just walking up the steps. We don't want that. Like, that's terrible. So even though we're trying to fix people on both ends of those energetic spectrums, we are also trying to say, okay, what is the biological creature responding to? Because if you are putting something in, no matter how good it looks on paper, and it doesn't actually work out for them because of their personality, because of their psychology, or because of their actual whatever, fill in the blank, then it doesn't matter. So get rid of that. But in general, we're looking at some kind of a hypoxic week and some kind of an actual myotraumatic loading-based week. That's kind of the major reasons, but then also the fact that how long can you load joints very, very heavily and actually expect them to hold up? Usually people will do that heavy loading from their 20s into their 40s. And by the time they're 40, they have bum elbows, they have bum knees, their hips are shot. I'm trying to create someone who's the best for the rest of their life. And that may sound lame, but that's at least how my mind works.
Well, it's a good thought process. You don't want to train until you're 40 and stop, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, cool, we're done. You don't really finish training. With the hypoxic training and the application of that, you were talking about rate limiting factors, and when you're looking at a traditional hard gainer, which is basically they've got rate limiting factors that you haven't uncovered yet and how to solve those problems. Does the hypoxic training and how that impacts ionic exchange and oxygen particle flux, etc., impact into their metabolism of drugs, supplements, macronutrients?
Everything, yeah. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I love that far end spectrum glycolytic-based training, either HIIT-based work or those hypoxic-based weeks. If we can understand how oxygen alters subatomic particle movement and changes with protons and electrons, you start realizing, oh, wow, what else does that do? That influences enzymatic systems that cleave, dismantle, and break down these drugs. So all of a sudden, you can start getting more out of less drug. So I see this all the time with my client base, where someone comes to me, they may have a good amount of musculature, but yet again, they just can't really handle those hypoxic weeks. They are not doing any kind of hit-based work. And some people can't because they're just too muscular. Again, the pros are a good example. Got to fix that some way though. You fix that, all of a sudden, they were taking maybe 30 IUs of insulin before. Maybe now they're down to 15 because they just can't handle anymore because they are cleaving the drug so much better. It is the changing in oxygen and subatomic particle fluxing is going to improve drug dismantling and nutrient partitioning. So literally get more out of your food and more out of your drugs. Who doesn't want that?
Exactly. Less side effects, more positive benefits for everything like that. Is that one of the ideas behind the injectable L-carnitine as well?
Yeah, part of it. So it's like an injectable cure for that. Instead of going ahead and going out and doing your cardiovascular work or handling oxygen differently, you can take the drug a la injectable L-carnitine to go ahead and drive that. Remember the two fuel substrate theory, whatever that was from how long ago? That's what injectable carnitine is doing. It's allowing you to flux nitrogenous, glycogen, glucose, and lipid-based particles even better than you normally would. So it's actually not even the two fuel theory, it's actually the three, creating all of our macronutrients fluxing properly. And then L-carnitine goes ahead and improves androgen binding constant and or actually reduces the actual constant and increases its ability to actually find receptor, go in, send a signal, go ahead, go down the stream and attach to another receptor. So it's improving binding affinity and constant, which is super cool. Get more out of your drugs. It drives so many different things depending on when you take it. You can take it nocturnally in a very low dosage at the energized state to actually start recovering cardiac tissue. So people that I have helped had, go ahead.
Oh, I was just, because I remember you did a post on Instagram on that, on remodeling cardiac tissue with a client who was pretty bad shape from memory. And I was like, that is a really interesting concept.
Oh, it's cool. You can chelate heart-specific ions. You can improve the decylation, recylation cycle, so how your actual cardiac tissue handles fats. You can improve how the actual ventricles are changing from a remodeling aspect, so both left and right, which is very novel, no other drug can do. It was in Scandinavia, some other place. I'm bad with geography. I'm good at a lot of things, bad with geography. One other place has been doing carnitine therapies for cardiac-based patients for years and years, and somehow it's never really gotten out of that side of the world. Yeah. So I kind of stole it from them basically, but it is such a novel way. They do IV therapies at home, you can just do intramuscular. But yeah, carnitine obviously has so many tremendous applications.
Yeah, it's a very, very cool stuff. Cool. There's a lot there for trainers to take in. They're probably going to be like in their anatomy textbooks after that. Their physiology textbooks, pardon me. We haven't talked too much anatomy yet. What I really loved was looking at the inter-individual response that you talked about. So if someone hates or is not responding too well to the oxygen jet weeks, you pull that out. That observation-based decision-making seems to form a big part of your coaching the whole way through. I remember you would go through, let's send check-ins and the photos, you would go through every detail and you would look at every aspect of the data that I submitted. It was nothing was wasted. And I think that's something, how did you, put this into a really good question. Basically, how did you come to that concept of actually looking at all those different data points and going, all right, cool. How does this data point influence this decision that I'm going to make? So, for example, you'd look at the body composition pictures. You'd be like, all right, cool. You got more insertion in the biceps because you drop body fat, etc. You would then say, all right, cool. Let's modify food by this much. Let's modify drugs by this much. How did that process come about?
So I think it actually came about by me loving my job. And that sounds lame, but I only really work with people I like. And over the years, what's that?
It's not lame at all. It's awesome. Okay,
good. I never know how I come across. I always just try and be myself. But yeah, I started off just really loving my job, like from the first freaking day. And as I started conversing with my clients, everyone becomes a friend of mine. So it's like I get paid to talk to my friends. So as that kind of happened, I realized I'm helping my friends out. I want to make sure if they're paying me, I'm giving them what they deserve. So going through every kind of point, maybe kind of overanalyze things to make sure that autonomics are good, sleep is good, gut health is good, relationships are good. Everyone's doing a kind deed every week at least. Other comments. I started adding to my check-ins now. What can I do better as a coach or a friend? Like I'm adding more to this over the years because I'm just finding it more and more fun. And I want to help people out more and more. So then that kind of sparked okay, if I'm getting feedback that we have pictures, okay? So let's look at you, for example. Your biceps were growing perfectly, right? Nothing bad has happened there. Their progress just out the wazoo, happy as can be. but yet I start hearing that there is relationship problems, which wasn't the case with you, just so everyone knows. But let's just say there's relationship problems, there's strain, there's stress and sleep problems. I start thinking, ooh, okay, first of all, my friend's hurting. I want to help him out emotionally. So we talk about that. Number two, that's going to be a rate limiting factor. If you're having all these cortisol-based changes in pattern, these release of glucocorticoids, the affecting of your sleep, your recovery is going to go down. Your ability to actually oxidize and liberate fat, so lipolysis beta oxidation, that's going down. It's going to start throwing a wrench into everything. So we have to fix it from that aspect. So even though you are progressing perfectly on paper and on the actual progress pictures and videos and all that fun stuff, I look for the rate limiting factor and then go, okay, we got to fix that. So maybe it is bringing in an ashwagandha or an ibidin to start managing those cortisol-based patterns. Maybe it's more like a rhodiola with a higher rosifene and solidified content to really make sure that you can handle and adapt to that stress. Maybe it's just saying, hey, you know what? You need to spend one night for at least an hour every single week, one night talking with your wife, or again, whatever arbitrary problem is happening in the scenario, and you need to make sure that she's taken care of, you're good and you're communicating. I do that with people all the time. I make up all these protocols because I run into so many things like that. So it could be something as simple as you both start off the conversation with saying, you know what, we're not going to fight. I want this to be a very productive conversation, no getting mad, no raising tempers, and then continue. So it's setting the pace and the tone for that conversation to be productive. And maybe you both supplement beforehand with some ashwagandha or whatever we talked about to just keep the heart rate a little bit lower, keep emotions a little bit lower so you don't fight, you know? And that's kind of my thought process and how I kind of go about fixing those kind of problems.
I remember when we first started coaching, because all the questions, and it's a very comprehensive form, which I love. And the first thing we started working on was my circadian dysfunction. Of course, we had a newborn, and straight away it was like, cool, you were on the bat like so quickly, where a lot of coaches would be like, all right, cool, just deal with it because you've got a newborn, that's what's going to happen. You were like, no, very proactive about it, making sure I was getting morning sunlight exposures for the ionic photonic exchange in the eyes, supplementation of that time of day, getting outside, going for a walk. All those things were addressed like on day dot of the program. I remember like actually getting up after reading the book you sent me, the basic program, and going, all right, cool, I'm gonna go for a walk now, and just get that early morning sunlight exchange to actually help me be a better dad throughout the day, but also a better trainer, better coach, better everything like that. And it was a very interesting way to do it because you didn't wait, you kind of predicted, which is probably because your experience of having kids as well, that didn't hurt, but it was a really cool thing to see as a coach, someone who actually gave a damn about the extenuating factors rather than just making sure the periodization was on point.
I guess it's not really fair. I have all 5 infinity stones right next to me. So I can just look into my crystal ball and see what problem's going to happen with people, and I just fix them before they happen.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's, if you got the infinity stones, use them, man. Use them for good, not like Thanos did. Now with that, like with the conversation that we've had, like one of the things I did want to touch on was you obviously have a very large ability to handle a ton of information. My coaches generally call me chat NPC. So for Meldrum performance coaching, because I answer all their questions all the time, very rapidly, but you make me look like ChatGPT 1.0 compared, you're like ChatGPT version 6, you haven't come out yet. So and one of the things we did, and it was one of the biggest contributing factors to my basketball success, was the neuroplastic work you did with me as a client. So can you give us a little rundown on the impact of neuroplastic work and how it can improve you both as an athlete and also as a practitioner? Because we want to give the audience a practical stuff that they can do like today to be a better coach, better trainer, and also a better person.
Definitely, yeah. So prefacing this with saying that I was the dumb kid at school. I would have to read things 10 times, 50 times, even if I liked the subject, to really retain any kind of information. Straight BC student all through high school, didn't really care. Started trying in college, but still pretty hard. I still ended up, graduating summa cum laude, but I worked my butt off, and I still just had to burn through so many hours because I just couldn't retain anything. So if we look at that kind of person who's born with kind of, I don't want to say a dumb brain, but I just had a very atrophied brain. All the different cortical regions of my brain just weren't really activating and firing properly. So we look at the myological world. You stop training your biceps, stop eating right, they're going to atrophy. Start training them again, start eating right, they start hypertrophy. It's the same thing in the brain. But in the brain, we have so many other bits and bobs in there that can add to the amalgam of me being able to process information better, speak more clearly, retain more information, recall that information, you name it. So when we're looking at that, not only white matter, gray matter, all the different parts of the brain, the neurons, the axon, the dendrites, you go down and start listing all the different things. And then you go through, oh, wow, I forgot about dopamine, serotonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine, looking at all these different things, you realize, how am I supposed to change this? Before you even take a supplement for your brain, before you start taking a nootropic to start getting your neurological functioning back, do something. So everyone likes to take a supplement first instead of actually doing some kind of repetition. So just like we go to the gym to train our biceps, we do some kind of neuroplastic work to train our brain. So there are multiple different things. That the two easiest things I always tell people is the takeaways. If we're trying to rehypertrophy our brain, we're trying to improve that dopaminergic and serotonergic metabolism in our frontal cortex to allow us to make better decisions. We make better decisions, we start breaking bad habits, we start storing memories better, calling information better, everything starts to improve from there, right? So if we can start the rehypertrophying of specific portions of our brain, the first thing starts with what everyone stopped doing in 2023, and that is cursive writing. Right? No one does cursive writing anymore. So both hemispheres of our brain are not communicating. That fluidity is lost. So whenever you're texting your friends or your coaches or whoever, you're getting a one text reply, one sentence, and then another text, one more sentence, another text, one more sentence. Nothing is one cohesive, well thought out, written, thoughtful paragraph anymore. And that's part of our society today because they stopped teaching cursive in school. So because of that, we're seeing lower IQs. We're seeing all of the neurological degeneration issues and diseases start to increase as well. We're seeing a lot of nasty things. So one of the easiest things you could do, doesn't even have to be specific, write in cursive at some point of the day. Start doing some journaling if you want to. I like to be positive. Every morning I have my entire list of neuroplastic things that I do, games and stuff. And part of that is journaling about my day. It's writing in cursive and talking about how much I love my family or what we're doing that day, goals for the week, whatever it is, doesn't even have to be that much. But in some way, getting back into that cursive writing. If you haven't done it for a while, you're going to go to do it and you're going to be amazed at how terrible you probably are. Because you're going to go, like you're going to stop. You're going to forget what it is. You're supposed to be fluid and just write just like you're speaking. It's meant to be that fluid. So if we can improve communication between the brain, then we can improve other different cortical areas that dealing with speech, dealing with focus and concentration. Let's not get into that. Actually, that'll take us down a whole rabbit hole. Other means of very applicable, easy information is go on to your iPhone, smartphone, whatever, and look at all the different neuroplastic apps they have. There's so many out there. I really love the Elevate app. That's still my favorite. Awesome. I do it every single day. It's one of the best investments you can make. And it is just a bunch of brain games. That's all it is. They have focus games, concentration games, mathematic games. You can pick and choose. If you just do the 5 daily games every single day, you're going to be so well off. And then as you get better, you start getting up to the 400 levels. You're really starting to refine. So where I'm at right now is that refinement. And I've been running into problems with memory storage. So every day I make sure I learn at least one new thing, and they're usually pretty high tier concepts, but trying to remember an entire chemical cascade, a new one every single day, and then recall that a week later is tough. So I started running into the issue of not being able to store any more memories. But remember, our body's plastic, our brain's plastic. So I have to hypertrophy more areas of my brain. So I'm doing different kinds of app games along with that. So then you look into being bilingual, you start looking into all the other things you do, even with eye drills and things like that. And you start realizing, holy crap, it's just like when you go into the gym and see all the different machines and dumbbells and barbells, squat racks, and all that cool stuff. Same thing's very applicable for our brain. There's so many little things you can do, and writing in cursive and using an app like the Elevate app are the two easiest things everyone could do now. Then after that, your coaches, because they'll hear that, so like, okay, now I'm getting my neurological reps in for the day. I want to back that up. Then you start looking into the nootropics. You start assessing, okay, what's my problem? Is it speech, fluidity? Is it memory recall? Is it focus concentration? And you start kind of fixing the problem from there. You're just trying to learn so much more. Okay, maybe it's an NGF or a BDNF problem, or maybe it's a GDNF-based driver. So the actual process and the different ways of learning also with dopamine, serotonin. What's your problem? Find the spectrum. What your problem is at. Fix that first, because just like in the prior conversation, let's chat the principle, find the rate limiting factor, find the weakness, and fix that.
It's really cool hearing that. It's kind of like strength, like we break it down into like what coaches have done over the years. Like strength training was very, very basic, and then we kind of found out what the rate limiting factor was. Like you had people like Poliquin doing structural balance to identify rate limiting factors in strength, and then you got Louis Simmons and all that kind of stuff. Then it went to hypertrophy, and then cardio was kind of like this redheaded stepchild that no one really cared about. And then you got guys like Joel Jamieson who are talking about, all right, cool, you're going to target this ventricle with this cardiac approach. You're going to target this aspect of an energetic system. So you need to prescribe cardio with this level of accuracy for like conditioning athletes. And what you're talking about now is doing the exact same thing, but for neurological tissue, for brain, to go, all right, cool, we can actually target all these areas with specific drills, activities, practices, etc., to fix your rate limiting factor, to make you a better athlete, coach, person, father, mother, whatever it is, which is a really, really exciting thing.
Yeah, if you take that approach to anything in life, you're going to find success, whether it's training or myological changes, whether it's reading for neurological changes, like you said about the relationship thing. Like my goal right now in life is to be the best human I can be, meaning best father and husband first. That's the most important thing to me.
Yep.
Then being the best actual business owner, coach, friend, whatever I can be. And then it's always getting smarter. It's getting leaner. It's getting healthier. I'm able to maintain 241.8 pounds as of now and still do my hill sprints, still do my boxing, still take my PBO based walks. Heart rate sits around like 45 to 55 at night, depending on the day. I'm only getting better, and I'm trying to be that superhuman guy who can do it all. And I'm proud as heck to say that I freaking can do it all. I never miss a moment with my kids. I never miss a beat with my clients and my friends. I don't miss training sessions. I train twice a day. I'm doing so much. And again, I didn't have genetic strengths to really help me with that. And I say that not to give me so much credit, but to tell everyone that if I could do it, literally anyone can. It obviously takes that consistency. And my greatest strength genetically was always my willpower. I will say that. So I could just push through. I could grind through things if I have to. If you can do that, pretty much do anything.
Yeah, I'd probably say I'm in a very similar boat. It was willpower. I was not naturally genetically inclined to be a larger person, like gain weight. Now I'm like 100 kgs of abs still year round. And like I was 70 kilos dripping wet. And it was just pure, I had the persistence to obviously find solutions, but also just to keep going. I'll just keep training and doing whatever it has to do to get better, to achieve the goal, no matter what it has to be. One thing you said there, and this is something that I've talked about with so many clients, so many students, man, the amount of people that do these now because of your influence is PPO walks.
Good. I love that.
Every single student's like, so what can I do with this particular health condition? Oh, the client's got type pre-diabetic, PPO walks. Whatever it is, go for a PPO walk. It's the easiest. Yeah. It's one of the lowest hanging fruit, but the kind of the highest output behaviors that you can give to someone, particularly in a chronic health condition. Can you talk a little bit about that and why it's so goddamn awesome?
For sure. So first of all, I love that because again, I only follow my wife on Instagram. I don't scroll. I don't look for people. So I am so out of touch with what people are talking about or anything like that. So hearing that it's like blown up like that is awesome because it is. It's the highest yield thing you can do in your day. Just like meditation, just like walking outside on the ground, that there's literally no negatives. It's just your time. Doesn't have to be that much. Okay.
Yeah, I think I've got about, I was just doing the figures. It would be around 350 to 400 coaches have been influenced into prescribing PBO stuff for their clients because of this, which is very, very cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like thousands of people.
Cool. That's nuts. Again, and that blows my mind because I'm in my own little made up imaginary world over here where it's just Alex land every day with my family and talk with my friends. And I hear, oh, there's actually people out there that follow his stuff and actually like it, you know?
PBO walks are, man, every single student and client is just like, they're like, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, just go for a slow walk with nasal breathing, keeping your heart rate below 99. And there's a few other things that we can do to enhance that. Talk about how we can, like what the goal is of it, and then how we can enhance it for our clients in an easy to do way, please.
Definitely. So first of all, let's look at cardiac tissue, right? So the heart without any kind of neurological input beats at about that 68. So sinus rhythm is about that 60 to 80 range. Yeah. But the problem is, without that neurological input, the heart can technically beat up to 100 and not be technically sympathetic. So we're looking at that 100 beats per minute. It's kind of being the sympathetic, parasympathetic world, but the healthier we get, we more want to be bradycardic. We want to be that 60 beats per minute or lower. That more tachycardic 80 plus is generally where we don't want to be, but during the PBO walk, what we're trying to do is be in that sinus rhythm or lower, ideally. We are trying to get that nasal breathing pattern down to get better at using stored body fat in order to fuel our day. So what that looks like is, and remember how we lose fat, everyone, we are losing it via breath work. So the fat on your abs, your glutes, your quads, or wherever, it's a bunch of change of carbons, right? We breathe in oxygen attaches to those carbons, breaks off your butt, attached to that oxygen, we breathe it out as what? Carbon dioxide, CO2. So we are trying to get better. If we start nasally breathing, we start to conserve that CO2 better and get more efficient with handling it. And what does that do better? All of a sudden, that CO2 molecule kind of hangs around a little bit more internally. It can pull off more carbons and start pulling in more oxygen. You get more efficient at pulling off stored body fat and using stored body fat for energy because you're enhancing how you utilize oxygen. So then you're getting the deeper portions of the lung involved, much oxide goes up. It's literally a win-win-win from losing body fat to driving down arterial stiffness. So the thing that causes atherosclerosis, multiple cardiac-based issues, we're using this time to nasal breathe, keep a lower heart rate, relax, have fun, and literally lose fat and just get healthier. Once you are very good at parasympathetic beta oxidative walks, you're going to all of a sudden start to do what we talked about before: partition nutrients better, dismantle your drugs better, training is going to improve, everything's going to improve from taking these simple walks outside. And depending on who you talk to, everyone has different kind of prescriptions for these walks outside. Stan Efferding is probably the most well known for saying the 10-minute walks for digestion, insulin sensitivity being better than metformin. I wouldn't say better than metformin, but in a different way. And I love the concept. Anyone who says take a walk outside, you're my best friend. I love it. It's only going to help people. So to me, we're really using these PBO walks to handle oxygen and carbon dioxide better, to improve how we're actually utilizing stored body fat, and to allow us to get better from a cardiac aspect throughout the day. Because if we're training and we're super sympathetic for 2 to 4 hours out of the day, rest of the day, we should be pretty bradycardic. We should be like 60, sub 70 beats per minute, no matter who you are. As you get more muscular, as you are, 400-pound strongman, 300-pound powerlifter, 300-pound bodybuilder, those autonomics get skewed. So not everyone can accomplish that, but the goal should be 70 beats per minute or lower, trying to be close to that bradycardic range. The more tachycardic we are, the more you're sitting there, the more you're just wasting energy, and the more you're driving up, more of a sympathetic world. And then the release of glucocorticoids, you start pulling nitrogen out of muscle cells, you start pulling glycogen out of muscle cells. We don't want that. We want to pull purely from stored body fat. And it's never 100% just from stored body fat, but we're trying to favor and bias that.
Yeah, you're just trying to bias that towards have that better outcome there. One thing that you talked about as well the other day was really pulled into that, the difference between facts. It was on Instagram. It was rate limiting factors for female athletes, all different types. It was fat oxidation versus fat lipolysis. Yeah. Can you just talk about that? Because that's something that, again, when I'm coaching my guys, when I basically say, all right, cool, we know that thermodynamics works, right? And the problem with thermodynamics is, in the evidence-based world, is if it doesn't work, people just say, do it harder. Like, that's basically the rule of thumb. It's just like, do thermodynamics hard, go into further deficit, go into further deficit. For a lot of people, going into that further deficit basically makes it too hard to adhere to the goddamn thing, because they're eating nothing at all because they've got bad advice. But generally, a lot of the time, they have physiological rate limiting factors that stop them from that process working. So you clear that stuff up for them, you help them move, help them function better physiologically, they can then lose body fat at a higher amount of calories, low amount of output. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss was the difference between those two concepts, the oxidation versus the lipolysis, and how you identify that in the client and how that can potentially have an impact.
Definitely. Yeah. So if we look at the cellular level, okay, we have an actual cell, we have an adipocyte, right? So this fat cell. In the middle, picture it like a little tadpole with 3 tails. So it's a glycerol head with 3 fatty acid tails. Whenever we are driving up these different sympathetic-based processes or parasympathetic-based processes, because you can lose fat in both scenarios, we're releasing lipases from the outside external processes that come in, cut off and snip off those 3 tails. They get dumped out of the adipocyte. The glycerol head follows. It can go off and do other things. And then those actual 3 fatty acid tails have to go through the process of beta oxidation. So that is the actual burning off fat in the mitochondria. We won't get in depth into beta oxidation with all the different carbon changes and things like that. We're trying to split the alpha and beta carbon from each other, and then that gets recycled 2 actual carbons at a time. So in that world, what a lot of people can do, and again, depends on the demographic of the person, what their specific problem is. Some people be really good at lipolysis. So they can break that actual head away from the tail, put that into the bloodstream, but then what does it do? It's never getting oxidized. So it's going back and just restoring in your biceps, your triceps, your base, your glutes, wherever. Whereas other people are amazing at actual oxidation, but they can't snip off a fatty acid glycerol head tail to save their life. So we were trying to look at both of those equations to try and figure out, okay, which one are you lacking? And that's what we need to fix in order to improve your ability to lose fat. So the PBO walks are a really good way to do what? Get better at lipolysis. It also drives N-beta oxidation throughout the day, but during that specific PBO walk, it's more of the lipolytic process of pulling apart the tails from the head and putting it into the bloodstream. And then you can oxidize it off later on in the day, or if you maybe do a hill sprint, whatever later on. But that's a very good way to drive up more of the lipolytic side of things. So the actual process of lipolysis. The beta oxidative side of things can come in very simply of a clenbuterol, a carnitine, any kind of sympathetic stimulant, could be training, could be HIIT work. So many things drive beta oxidation. Most people, though, if I had to say, like in general, like our society as a whole, no matter the demographic, almost everyone's good at lipolysis, but bad at beta oxidation, but still bad with PBO walks, if that makes sense. So even though you can take PBO oxidate good at lipolysis, that doesn't mean that you can drive lipolysis to that degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's yeah, it makes sense. It's tricky to wrap head around. It's 3 a.m. here, but it certainly makes sense where it's not, they can be good at that, and then I'm struggling to get through it in my head because you've said so much stuff.
You're good. So basically what a lot of people can do is they can liberate, okay? They can liberate those fats, like you can never burn them off because they have poor autonomics throughout the day, right?
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
But if they're doing those PBO walks, just because they are endogenously good at lipolysis doesn't mean they're good at doing the PBO walks, because in that environment, heart rate is slightly elevated, body temperature is slightly elevated, ventilation slightly elevated. So looking at a change in resting versus actual training states, even in that state, even though being PBO wise, that's still technically training, even though it's relaxed, lower heart rate, you're still not sitting on the couch with a BPM of like 45. So even though they're good at lipolysis endogenously, doesn't mean they're pretty good at PBO walks, which means they're not going to potentiate lipolysis.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. Cool, well done. Good recovery. It was my misunderstanding than your lack of explanation. So that's very, very cool.
They're tough concepts, dude. They are so tough. And remember, everything I'm saying now is through my lens and through my own verbiage. I have to make up my own words all the time. PBO walks, you can't find that in literature. Prolastic cardio, can't find that in literature. Like, you have to make up our own words because these things just don't exist yet. And it's the research, the books, the conversations that I've had that influence how I talk. So I'm talking in a very specific way. Whereas if you were to follow, I don't know, Zed North, I don't know if that's a person, but Zed North talks a completely different way. So you're going to talk like him because that's how you hear it being interpreted. So it really is from my own perspective and lens.
Yeah, and you know what? I love that. I love that you. It sounds like such a. What's it remind me of? Another Avengers reference, Infinity War, where someone says that word's made up, and Thor responds and says all words are made up. And it's right. Words, they do get made up. It's kind of like, yeah, if you're doing something that's based, there hasn't been a word to describe it yet. You need a word to describe it. You need to have that framework to actually talk to people. And when you explain it like that, PBO walk, you're literally talking about what it's trying to achieve. Because once you gave them to me, I looked it up and I was like, this isn't a thing yet. It's like the whole concept makes sense. So cool. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it. I think that's inherently the sign of innovation, rather than just going, oh, cool, this is what it is, which is, awesome. It takes a while to understand things that are new. Cool. We're getting close to the time limit. So you run a pretty unreal business, and the favorite thing I love about your business is you follow one person. I love that. There's a lot of the online coaching space now is literally getting people, sliding into people's DMs, hassling the hell out of them, and being a pain in the butt, basically. And one of the things that you do is people go to you. People seek you out because of your results, your reputation, etc. What would be your main tip for a coach who wants to move down that path, where they're not someone who's DMing everyone all day, constantly seeking out clients? They become the person that people want to seek out.
Get better.
Get good.
I don't mean that in a negative way at all. What I mean by that is start getting better. Find your niche. For me, it just happened automatically. I didn't even expect it to happen like this. I just like posting up things that I was learning or things I was doing with my clients. So obviously, transformation pictures are one of the best things you can do, because you can say, hey, guess what? I can back up what I'm talking about. So transformation pictures, number one. So get more clients, make more changes, more positive changes, influence them positively and care about them. There you go. There's number one. Number two, though, you got to find your niche. It doesn't have to be education. It could be, a lot of people will go down like the entertainment route, where they are more of a personality figure that people just like to follow. And then they go, oh, he also coaches. I'll work with him for that. Yeah. Whatever it is, find your niche. It could be in a specific field. You could be whatever, just for basketball, just for health, just for physique coaching, and slowly play to that niche, no matter what that means to you. So to me, whenever I say get better, I mean, get better at everything. Like we talked about before, it's literally progressing in every single way to become that ultimate person that you want to be. So I am very lucky to where I don't have to go out and fight for business, because my business has always, from the beginning, I always wanted to be word of mouth. I didn't want to have to, because in the beginning, everyone always does. They make a post, they say, hit me up for coaching, prepcoach.com, blah, blah, blah. And I still say that out of habit. Yeah, exactly. But we want to get away from that, because we want people to see our content and say, wow, I want to go to him. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. He can produce results. I want to go and seek him out. So over time, you're trying to build up this whole reference system to where you're a word of mouth business, because then nothing else matters. Like I could technically ghost the internet probably for the rest of my life right now and be completely fine business-wise. I don't want to do that because I still want to keep expanding my business even further than where it's at now. I want to keep helping people for free. It's multifaceted there, but you want to be able to have that option just because it shows you you're doing something right. So the whole goal is to get that word of mouth going. And if you just be a good person and care about people, the whole do better kind of takes care of itself because you get more results, you make people happier, you get them their dreams and goals faster. When I'm thinking about working with people, the first thing I care about is making sure that they're cared for, they're taken care of, and they really are making strides towards their goals, no matter what it is. If I have someone stepping on the Olympia stage or going to the Olympics or just fixing their whatever, trying to lose fat for a vacation or trying to recover from a heart surgery, they are all the same to me. I don't prioritize anyone. I don't go out through my emails and say, oh, I got to respond to this pro athlete first. It's bottom of the email line. I get to them in order. Everyone's treated the same. And I do that because they're all my friends. Like I've never gotten starstruck. I think it's just my personality. But those names don't do anything for me. Like, oh, you're my friend. We're cool. Like that. That's all it is to me. So if we can change that mentality, because I know a lot of younger coaches, and this is more for your coach trying to help them out and other coaches listening, they'll see and they'll think, oh, there's that one client. If I could just land him and turn him pro or let him win that Olympia or whatever, then my name's going to blow up. Yeah. Does not always work out like that. I've worked with more people in the world that you can imagine where I thought that was going to happen. Never happened. Never happened. Never will. So you never rely on that one golden egg because it happens to a dozen people out there. What about the other thousands of coaches, hundreds of thousands of coaches that doesn't happen to? So if you approach it with a better mentality of let me help this person, let me help my friend out, let me get them their dreams and goals faster, the rest of it really takes care of itself.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like I've worked with multiple people going to the Olympics, and every single time I was like, this is going to be it. This is going to be the game changer for the business. And the next day was the same day. Nothing ever blew up. I won trainer of the year. Nothing ever blew up. The biggest thing was always getting good, helping more people out. And then I'm very similar to you. I'm very lucky. I don't really have to go out seeking new business all the time. I have coaches come to me for help with their business because they know I've helped a bunch of coaches get up to $50,000 months, which is pretty good for an online coaching sphere. And the main thing I tell all my guys is it's exactly that. It's like you want to be known for something and have people come to you rather than you having to go out to people. No one likes a door-to-door salesman, but people like finding someone who's really good. If you're going to get a knee surgery, who do you want? You want the crappy surgeon or you want to find the best? You always want to find the best. Because
the soft sell. I am the king of the soft sell. If you want to work with me, cool. Work with me in 6 months, cool. You don't want to work with me, cool. Go find a coach that you relate well to. Awesome. I'm happy for you. If you find that person that's not me, they get you your goal. I feel like the hard sale, especially in the online world, you just see it all the time. Everyone gets spam emails. Everyone gets all the DM requests from whatever bot saying, oh, I can grow your followings to 1,000 or whatever, 100,000. You don't want the hard sell anymore. I feel like change your personality to the soft sale and just be really good at your job.
Yeah, I think that's an absolute, probably the best way to go about long-term career success and also satisfaction. Awesome.
And like you said, right there, long-term is the big thing. You can blow up, not be able to handle the business and then fail overnight. I have made sure.
I always tell my guys no more than two per week. 2 clients a week is the max because then you're on board.
I like that role.
Yeah. Per week. And after a year, you've got 100 clients. You're making good money. And then, that can expand exponentially. Man, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I'm just very aware of your time because I know we could probably talk for a very, very long time. I know you got tons of mentoring students. So thanks so much. I'm going to post where to get you online. It's the Prep Coach. Is it Alex Kikel or is Alex Kikel the Prep Coach on Instagram?
Yeah. Pretty sure it's just Alex Kikel. I should know that, but I don't look.
I forget my name half the time too on Instagram. So it's like, is it Meldrum Performance Coaching?
Oh, it's Alex underscore Kikel. Yeah, Alex underscore. Yep.
So I'll post some links up to your site. I highly recommend working with Alex. I've done it. So I'm proof in the pudding. He got me to a level of performance that I never thought I could get to, and business has absolutely blown up since then. So recommend it in every way possible. So Alex, thanks so much for your time, buddy. It's been a blast.
Appreciate you having me on, man. I really do.
Thanks, heaps. Cool recording.